I'm gonna make a part 2 to that video. They're saying the reason why. So the aliens are us from the 7th dimension. Go watch the first video. If you haven't seen it, this one is gonna make sense. They're saying the reason why we're on vacation down here is because up there, what happens is, and when I'm saying up there, it's just like actually parallel, but like that's just the way I reference it. So, and I'm wondering too, like, what about the 6th dimension? And they're like, they're not telling me about that. They're like, we'll tell you when we get down here, because they're blocking that information. They're like, we're just focusing on the fact that we are from the 7th dimension. We're coming back down to the one that you're in, which is technically the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Because we're not in just one dimension. Like, our consciousness exists in a different dimension than our physical reality actually exists. And so they're saying it's really quite complicated, and I'm not going to understand it. So, like, that's why they don't give me those channels. Because I'm sitting here like, what the fuck? So anyway, they're like, we're just, for the sake of talking about things, we're going to say 5th dimension and 7th dimension. So, they're like, what happens in the 7th dimension is something starts, so it feels like our reality is collapsing right now. Like, that's what it feels like. Like, our reality physically and mentally and emotionally and all this stuff, like, collapses, right? So we're feeling the fullness of the collapse is what's happening in this dimension. In the 7th dimension, it's actually like this very kind of civilized society where like weird stuff starts to happen. Like, people start to go missing and buildings start to collapse and like weird shit starts to collapse and like in the 7th dimension, like that stuff doesn't happen. Like, it's very civilized, like they're past, like they're way evolved. And so so even ascension and descension is different. It's very different. So I'm excited to, like, you know, kind of know a little bit more about that, about ascension and descension and how it's like a little different in each dimension. And so, but we could see that with Yeshua's times. Like, they told me, like, with Yeshua's times, like, we were at the tables and in person at the temples and all of that stuff, and then we met each other in person. And obviously now we're spread out way differently, and we're meeting through the phones instead of, like, you know, through in person. Like, obviously some light workers meet in person, but most of us are like meeting online. So anyway, back to the 7th dimension. What happened? So they have time travel and stuff already. Like, that's not like a secret or anything. Like, that's actually something that's used very often in the 7th dimension. It's this thing. But the collapsing that starts to happen is not like a normal thing. And so then they have to come back in time. And they have to contact the government that's down here at the time in order to come back in time. And so then they give the government at the time, which is our government now, which was, you know, in the 50s, they give them this advanced technology so they're able to come through these star portals. So they give them Fermilab and they give them CERN and all this stuff. And I was raised in Fermilab, or raised in Batavia, which is the one town, which is Fermilab, 143 on the clock. And that's why they're telling me I was raised in Batavia, because that town has alien protection. So does CERN. These portals, so there's other portals too, they're telling me. Which is why they told me about, like, the Ronan Farrow and the Sam Altman. That's why they gave me that article the other day. Because they're like, yeah, we were going to tell you about, like, stargates and portals, like, here in a few days here. So, like, that's how they do it. They, like, breadcrumb my reality. So, they breadcrumbing, and that's why they've told me about this. That's why they showed me the Amy Eskridge stuff, the P-47s, the P-52s. Then showed me Finding Nemo and the seeded transmissions, because they had to come back in time. They realized, like, they have to manipulate all these timelines and seed all this stuff into our reality in order to, like, subconsciously tell us that this time is coming without telling the elites. Because if the elites figured it out, then they would have stopped it, because on their timeline, they are taking over the world and everything's working out for them and all this stuff, right? And they, like, stole the election and, like, all that stuff, right? So when they come down here and they realize they have to seed us subconsciously and do this without the elite's knowledge, they're like, we have to give them the technology, though. We have to give them the time travel technology and give them all this advanced technology, because we need it in place here so we can come travel back in time. And so they knew that by giving these corrupt people this stuff, they were going to use it for bad. And so basically the issue up there is that they realize that they're going to, like, Gaza's going to happen. Iran is going to happen. all the terrible shit that they do, the trafficking, all of that is, they have to allow that to happen up there in the seventh dimension. That's like the huge like dilemma. And that's why they create the Galactic Council. And that's when the Galactic Council is created, is the seventh dimension. And then the Galactic Council actually roams from the 12th dimension. That's like where, so that's where it's like, okay, guys, we're really going to get the full scope of everything. Like when they come down here, they're going to tell us everything. They're going to tell us everything, about this universe, basically. And so, but that's also where they realize, like, that's how they, because, like, for me down here, how I rediscovered God is that I started to get psychic channels. And that's, like, how I rediscovered God, basically, right? And so, in the seventh dimension, how they rediscover God is, like, they're like, okay, well, like, we have to make the choice to allow all these souls down here to perish horribly. And they realize, like, for me and you and stuff, we're gonna have to go through deep, deep, deep trauma, and some people are not gonna make it. And they're like, they have to make this grand sacrifice for the greater good, basically, in the seventh dimension. So that's why they're saying we're on vacation down here, because they're like, down here, we don't have to make the choice. We do have to experience the feeling of it. But up there, we have to make the choice to, like, I mean, can you imagine if right now, like, aliens came to us and they were like, hey, if you guys, like, don't, like, give this technology to these really corrupt people and, they're going to do all this horrible stuff, you are going to literally collapse this entire planet and the future of it. So, like, that's, like, what it is. Like, like, because we're in this, like, dilemma of, like, okay, well, now we have to tell the truth to everybody. That's the dilemma here, is, like, oh, everybody's going to have to know the truth about this place, of what they've been doing, and, like, all this terrible stuff. The dilemma up there is, like, oh, shit, we're going to have to, like, let some really terrible shit happen in order to get everybody to the future. So it's like, so we're sacrificing, like, people's, like, comfort down here right now. We're sacrificing their, like, comfort of, like, oblivion and bliss and being in this matrix and being in the confusion and being in the manipulation. That's what we're sacrificing. Up there, they sacrifice people's actual lives. So it's like that we're metaphorically sacrificing people's lives down here. We're sacrificing people's identities. Because, like, that's the issue now, is, like, we have to tell people the truth of what's going on down here. Otherwise, because we have to, because that's what's been going on down here. And people don't know about it in mass. But up there, it's like they have to, like, make this choice, like, actually make the choice, like, physically. And they have to, like, sit there and they have to, like, watch it and stomach it and all this stuff and, like, grapple with that. And so it's, like, again, like, how we're not in, like, the physical Revolutionary War or the Civil War anymore. We're more in a mental, spiritual war in our minds of, like, this place isn't like God, and we have to get rid of the judgment and the fear and the anxiety and, like, all this stuff. Up there, it's, like, the mental battle of, like, having to feel like you had control over the loss of souls, where it's like, that's again where they get God up there. They're like, oh, well, this is all, the God planned this anyway. This is all by God's design. So it takes the weight of the guilt off their shoulders, right? Just like the omnipotence of God down here, of knowing that God, like, did all of this, designed all of this, everything terrible, even your life. Getting to that perspective is, like, it takes the guilt and the relief and the weight off of your shoulders of your life, of, like, okay, it's like my parents weren't these, like, just awful people. There was, like, a grander design to this. Or, like, Trump isn't just this horrible person. There was this grander design, unfortunately, to this. There's so much more to our lives in this world than we realize. And it does, like, help you, like, forgive. That's what Christ consciousness is. It is like what they talk about in the Bible when he, like, forgives you of your sins. You forgive yourself and everybody else of your sins almost instantaneously, because you realize there's no need, there's no reason. We're not getting the full perspective down here. Once you get the full perspective, then it's like, oh, okay, it helps you release. It helps you release that. So that's the point of it. So anyway, this has been really intricate and very interesting. Very exciting. This has been one of the most exciting channels I've gotten so far, because it really just, like, pulls it all together, like, brings it home for me, because I'm like, this is, like, full circle now. Now I feel like I totally get what's going on.